Everybody, welcome back to another live stream podcast of the Commercial Kitchen Chronicles. We got Dusty back today, so it's always good to see Dusty back. Dusty recently moved, and so he had a couple weeks off. We had to get some stuff together, so I appreciate having Dusty back. And then we got special guest Matt Showers, HVAC grammarian.
Yep.
Matt's a pretty cool dude. Besides trolling all your grammar mistakes,
I do read those. I do read the captions. Yes.
I try to fix most of the captions sometimes, but I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I'm in my vein and I'll just let it go. I'm like, not pay attention, and then I always have a misspelling, at least one, and generally I see it and I just let it go because the secret is all about interaction and it drives interaction. So a lot of times I'll leave it in there, and if no one notices it, I'll take it out. But I'll catch it like a couple hours later, a couple days later, and most of I just leave it. So
now there's some people that will they intentionally will like leave misspellings or bad punctuation or something just to see if I catch it. Like Matt Waxer is one of those guys. He'll do it sometimes. He'll like put something in grossly misspelled just to see if I catch it. So
one of the smartest guys in the HVAC world.
Yeah, well, that's because he does it. Well, he even told me, like, he wrote in, like, I think it was like in one of his like papers, he even like wrote some like totally off the wall sentence in one of his papers just to see if like one of his professors caught it. And I think it was like, he said like it was like a panel of 5 and only one of them like actually caught it because they were like just skimming through or whatever. Then they totally missed this random sentence. It was he told me the story and I just started laughing.
Matt's a great guy, man. He's pretty funny. He's smart, man. Some of the stuff he works on. I never knew that Aon made that level of equipment because like around here it's just base level stuff. And then I seen him working on it. I'm like, that's Aon? I'm like, holy cow. But mine was like the stuff I seen was like 20 years old, not taken care of. And then he posts that stuff, computers hooked up to it, dehumidification, 6 or 8 or 10 compressors, big huge units. I'm like, holy cow, I had no idea. So
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I haven't gotten into anything like that quite yet, but I mean, I'm sure I'll see something like that here soon enough. Working for Train now.
Nice. So you want to give everybody a little bit of background about your role in the HVAC world and what you do and where you're from and that kind of stuff?
Sure. So I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which for those who aren't familiar with Pennsylvania at all, it's kind of like right smack in the middle of the state, south central area. So about like 3 hours from Pittsburgh and a couple hours west of Philly and a couple hours north of DC and Baltimore. So that's kind of the area I live in. Strangely enough, found out, the Gills in the Baltimore area. So I'm like, oh my gosh, we're practically like right by each other, so that was pretty funny. But I've been doing this now about, it's been 11 years. So a lot of light commercial and residential up until recently. I've been with Train now for about a month. So now I'm starting to see some bigger stuff, seeing chillers and bigger pieces of equipment. So that's like this new part. But I was with the company where I was before for almost 10 years. Doing a lot of, like I said, residential, light commercial, rooftops, some ductless. We did a little bit of VRF. And actually, one of my coworkers was just asking me if I was interested in doing some VRF here with Train because they have a partnership with Mitsubishi. And I said, oh yeah, man, I'm all for that. So maybe I'll be getting hooked up with some Mitsubishi training here on their VRF stuff. But yeah, that's where I am now. So I'm learning all sorts of new things. It's like I'm drinking out of the fire hydrant right now.
Oh yeah, man. I love to learn new stuff, so that's always cool. I get bored and I'll make a post. I'm like, oh, rack refrigeration is looking fun, and people are like, no, you gonna quit your job? I'm like, no, I'm just like bored. And like I'll go down this rabbit hole of like watching rack guys do stuff. I'm like, hey, I want to do that. Then I realize I got to start over, and I don't want to start over.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I see some of the stuff like you kitchen people do, and I'm just kind of like, that seems interesting, but man, that just seems like an awful lot to again, that'd be like, drinking from the hydrant kind of thing where it's like you got your hot side, you got all sorts of things going on in there. I mean, that's crazy, the kitchen stuff.
Yeah, I like it. It's never boring, that's for sure.
That's like when I did residential HVAC for so long, and then I switched to commercial, and my feet weren't even wet in HVAC, commercial HVAC. And then I went to the kitchen stuff, and I was like, man, this stuff, I mean, it's like one of those things where everything's totally different, but kind of the same. But it's the same thing. Drinking from the hydrant, there's a ton to learn, turn to work on. So it's a big thing.
Yeah, I always tell guys, especially coming over from like HVAC side, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know anything about a fryer." I'm like, "Well, have you seen this ignition system on a furnace?" Well, yeah. I'm like, "Well, it's the same ignition system that's on this fryer."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, I never thought of it that way." I was like, "It's all the same components." It's like, if you know how to diagnose it on this, you know how to diagnose it on here. You gotta try to figure out the sequence of operations, and some of the stuff is pretty crazy. But I mean, some of these chillers, these big rooftop units, these big package units are absolutely insane. The stuff they do too. So.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like I'm even some of this light commercial, what I would call light commercial with Train. Like we're doing what is it? I was helping to do a startup at a grow facility, and there are these units. They're manufactured by someone called KCC, but they slap Train's name on them. And I've not gotten into them, but they've got like, you look at the curb, and the curb is like, about like 3 feet up in the, like, the unit sits up about like 2-3 feet in the air because the curb has UV lights built into the what would, where the unit sits on top, because they've got all this stuff going on where they, they're trying to grow stuff in there, so it's kind of, that's a whole nother thing there where they're trying to maintain certain conditions in there. And I've heard some some other podcasts with people that are in like the cannabis area, and like that's a whole other thing. And so that's kind of wild too. They're like, we don't want fresh air. Like they want carbon dioxide in there because it's good for the plants, and they want, certain humidity levels that are good for the plants. And it's just like, it's kind of crazy. It's almost like rack refrigeration, as far as like trying to maintain like certain conditions, but you're doing it for plants,
Yeah. I talked to some guys it was 2 people, and they're from Colorado. They specialize in like grow op stuff. And like they're talking like they're running AC in the middle of winter because it's so much heat the plants put out and the lights put out. They're running AC in the middle of winter. It's like, how do they fight that? I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's one of the sites I was at actually before I went to Train. It was like a customer, and they had like a rooftop unit, and I went there. Oh my gosh, it's like in the spring, and it had locked out on a freeze stat. There wasn't like a fan cycling switch built into it. And I was like, "Hey, do you folks run this year round?" They're like, "Yeah, we do." And I'm like, "Well, this is why it wasn't working. It tripped out on a freeze step so I put a low ambient, basically a low ambient kit in, a head pressure sense control in it, and that made it go away." But yeah, that's kind of wild. Yeah, that's like, it could be like 10 degrees outside, but they need that air conditioning because of the plants and everything else, because they are just putting out so much heat in these facilities. It's wild.
Yeah, and they, like you said, they don't want to bring in fresh air, so they're not using they're not using free cool or whatever you want to call it. I mean, they're not using economizers. They're all sealed off. Most of them don't even have economizers on them. I mean, so they're just recycling that air in there. So that makes sense, man. It's a whole nother world. HVAC J604, my buddy, he's up in BC, and he always talks about working in grow facilities, and he's like, he absolutely hates it, like, because like it's not bad when they're small, but when the plants get big, like you can't walk in there because they got so many crammed in there. And he said you leave, and it's like you can just see like the pollen and the stuff like stuck to your clothes.
Yeah.
He's like, it's all in your tools. He goes home and he's like scrubbing his tools and scrubbing him, and you just can't get the smell off.
No, it's not gotten that bad yet. I mean, the place where I was at, it was like they expanded. They almost like they had like a smaller building, and then they basically built almost like, I'm going to say like they basically tripled in size as far as like what they built on from like what they had from old versus new. And so there's at least 50 pieces of equipment up on here between these these dedicated KCC units for the actual growing. And then they've got a series of smaller rooftop units for like the comfort sides. But some of those smaller rooftops, they have gas heat for comfort, but they have like some dehumidification with reheat on the refrigeration side. So yeah, it's been wild just to see what sort of stuff we're really getting into. I mean, now you're saying about chillers, it's like I've seen some centrifugal chillers and some screw chillers, but I haven't done anything with troubleshooting or anything. I'm just trying to get a grasp on how the heck this all works and what different components go where and what they're trying to do. It's kind of crazy. And even there's a school there's a lot of schools that I do now that we do, and there's one place that's actually like a chiller heat pump. So what they do is, with chillers, you have, you're making cold water, and then like the warm water in your condensing tubes is being used like it's getting sent to a cooling tower or whatever. And this place, what they're doing is they're actually using, depending on what they're using, like they're taking the cold water that the chiller is producing, and they're either then sending it into the building for cooling, or it's actually being sent out into like a large geothermal field to get to warm back up, because then they're using the condensing tube for heat. It's kind of crazy. So they're using a chiller as a heat pump. It's just wild, and the piping configuration was pretty wild to behold as well. Like they've got some like 3-way valves that they have to be positioned in certain ways so that it's like, okay, the hot water is going here now, or the hot water is going over here. It's
like a mixing valve or a tempering valve.
Yeah. It's wild. Yeah, just how they have it figured out, because usually when you have a chiller, it's just like you've just got dedicated cold water coming in for either for cooling or for processes or whatever, and then you've got a cooling tower then for your condensing waters. But to have it like where you're kind of using the condensing water then for heat is just a whole another thing.
It's crazy the things they're coming out with. I mean, it's all in the names of efficiency. I mean, it's just the technology is just advancing so fast. I mean, all the fields are. I mean, in the kitchens when I started, there was no touch screens, and now everything's got a touch screen. I mean, fryers, ovens, combi ovens. I mean, microwaves. There's warming cabinets. Have touch screens. It's just like, why? But I mean, it's just the way everything's going.
Yeah, all this computerized stuff or whatever. I mean, there are guys that there's one guy that's been with Train now for almost 30 years. And he goes, yeah, I remember when I started working for Train, like there was still stuff out there that we were working on that was built in like the 50s and 60s, and it was all mechanical, and it was, and they like electronics had just started coming in. And he goes, I could look at a schematic and I knew exactly what was going on with the sequence of operation. He goes, and then a board came out and I was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah,
the magic box.
Yeah, we got a guy like that. He actually did a show with us a while back, and he's worked in my industry for like 33 years or something. And he's just like, he's over. He's trying to retire, and he don't even like using the phone anymore. He's just to that point.
And some of those chillers, you can just hook your laptop up to, and you do your diagnostics through that, right?
Yeah, and I mean that's that was the one thing whenever when I first start with Train, they're like, here's a laptop, here's a phone. Like, I mean, that's the laptop I'm using right now actually for this. Yeah, but it's cool. Yeah, like, and then one of the other guys who was a coworker with where the last company I was with was then basically hooked me up with some stuff he goes, here's some like interface things that you're going to need to like hook up to different chillers. So yeah, basically, I can take a laptop, and if the chiller is recent enough, I mean, there are a couple older ones that they still, they're old enough, like from like mid 2000s, that they don't have that ability to be connected with a laptop. But generally, any of the ones I've gone to now, it's like, guys have shown me like, here, look, you plug it in, and then you can even, say, okay, here's the trend log. Like, oh, here's everything's looking normal. Oh, wait, here's the problem. Like something goes. Yeah. And even I can do like there are even some sites that I can even access remotely from here, like from my house. I can like log into the site and say, "Hey, how's everything looking in there?" So that's pretty slick as well. Like I don't even have, like with the way that I have with everything being connected now with Train. It's just it's really convenient. It's kind of fascinating just to just basically just have the abilities I have now, and even some of the almost like free reign that I have too, where it's like. They basically encouraged me when I first started here. They're like, oh, you're using a UEI meter. Well, we want you to use a Fluke or field piece meter. So go get yourself a new meter. Here's a credit card. Here's a company credit card. Go get yourself a new meter. I'm like, don't have to tell me twice to spend money to get new tools. All right, sounds good.
Done. Sold.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh, it's like, oh, I'm a tool addict. They're like, well, that's okay. We'll just feed your addiction. I'm like, no. That's not the point. Like, stop. Like, you're not supposed to be feeding the addict his addiction. Like, don't do that.
You don't need to be an enabler.
Yeah, stop enabling me. It's like, there's some guys now that are like, because we're gonna have some turnover here in a little bit with some management, because our one manager is going to be retiring here in May. Which good for him. I mean, he's retiring and he's only 61 and he's going to retire. I mean, it's great that, at least for him that, Train's been a good place for him to work for the last, I think it's been almost 30 years for him. But yeah, there are guys that are like, take advantage of what you're doing because you're so new and early on, like you can get away with more, you can buy more stuff, this and that and everything. I'm like, okay, all right, sounds good to me. So yeah, it's been, I mean, it's only been a month, but it's definitely been, it's been an interesting ride so far.
That's cool. Yeah, dude, I love watching those guys working those big giant chillers and stuff, man. When I first started, watching guys on YouTube, I was watching like Andrew Greaves, you know, and him working on stuff. I'm like, this stuff's cool. I was like, I want to do this, and it just never transpired. I was already pretty well into where I was at now, and I just don't want to start over. I mean, if we did that kind of stuff, I'd venture into it, but we don't do that kind of stuff. So it was like I'd have to leave. And I got a buddy, he teaches for the union 1 day a week, and he's in a van the other 4 days a week. He works for Siemens here in Indianapolis, and he's like, man, come work with me. He's like, I'll get you a job. He's like, we'll test you out of all his classes and everything. He's like, you'll start you off a journeyman. I was like, I'm not doing that, man.
Yeah, we have I work for the place I work for was originally a mechanical company, and then we branched off to refrigeration and then hot side. So we have quite a few customers that have chillers, and I never work on them. I've helped, you know, like, oh, turn off this valve, what, you know what I'm saying? Just like I've been a helping hand on some. But some of that stuff they do, and like I know we have one account where they'll just pull up like on Friday before, like, you know, midday, they'll pull up that customer's account and just look at it's like chiller, like their diagnostics, and just see how it's doing and how it's acting. So, you know, that way we know if we need to send a service tech out there and take a peek at it for the weekend. And that stuff's crazy. You can just see it remotely, see what it's doing, how it's reacting. So.
Oh yeah, and what's kind of wild too is like with Train, is like, you know, so I'm like kind of like, well, I'll say like on the mechanical side, there's a control side. Like there are guys that are they're just control technicians. So it's kind of nice. What can be convenient for even for them sometimes then is like if there's like a controls issue, like say like a guy could be in Baltimore, which is, you know, like an hour and a half from me, and the site that's having trouble is like, you know, maybe like a half hour for me. Well, it makes more sense for me to roll there because then I can go in there and plug into the equipment, and then he can use the application that team, it's called TeamViewer, and then he can basically like remote access my computer and do what he needs to do from my, like with my computer hooked up, and so that he doesn't have to travel like that 2 hours. It's just me traveling at like a half hour or whatever. So it's kind of it's kind of wild how, like, you know, the interplay, because now it's like, you know, you're working for a manufacturer on that side, so you basically have full advantage of you know, all those resources. And what's even kind of cool too is I can even, like, whenever we do some startups, say if we find something that's like a defect, like something that's wrong out of the factory, I can pull it up and then like basically zip it off, do what's called a field quality alert, and zip it off, and it gets sent to the factory, and then the factory looks at it and goes, you know, maybe we need to fix something here. Like I just had something, we had a leak on one of the reheat coils on one of those smaller units I was talking about. And I put it in, and sure enough, then someone, I can even suggest an action. And my suggestive action was, hey guys, use a micron gauge when you're in the factory, when you're pulling those down. I was like, you would see the leak that way easily enough, but apparently that was it wasn't a factory. It wasn't like a factory thing. It was like the coil. Whoever they got the coil from, the supplier like sent them like a bad coil. And so that's what they said to me. They're like, hey, you know, we'll deal with the supplier on this front. But it's kind of nice to basically be like, you know, everyone can, like, you know, bitch and complain about this piece of equipment is a piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. And I can go, yes, but I can go directly to those guys and say, hey, why is this a piece of shit? Yeah. It's kind of nice.
That's a good point. You were talking about the remote applications. Like there's even stuff on our side, some other manufacturers that, you know, the equipment can be tied to the internet and they can bring it up, and like they even have it set up, if it alarms, it alerts them, lets them know what it is. They'll actually call us and dispatch us. They take this part before the customer even knows that there's an issue. Nice. So it's crazy what's coming to it. Yeah, I mean, I only see more and more stuff's going to start going that way, but it's just amazing that, you know, the way things are going. So
especially with like robotics and like, you know, the implementation of like more electronics, it'll just be more and more like that. Everything could be remotely monitored, and which is a good thing and a bad thing, I guess. So
I suspected, I was talking with one of my coworkers, and I said, you know, it could eventually be to the point, like you can do things remotely, but it could eventually get to the point where it's like, you know, say like interplay learning, where it's like you got those VR things where, you know, it's almost like you just like wear like a set of VR glasses, and then like you are able to like tie into the equipment, and you can basically like, it can almost like mimic like you're there physically, but you're not. Like, so you can almost be like, okay, I'm going to measure like these 2 points here, even though you're not there physically, but it's like, you know, the machine thinks that you're doing it that way. I could see that happening, you know, who knows how long, but, you know, basically almost like, you know, virtual remote access. So it's like you can be there, but not actually be there.
Yeah, Interplay's getting involved in my world, the kitchen stuff. They're starting to put some
nice
kitchen stuff together. So I look forward to seeing how that's going to be. Maybe
Are they really?
Yeah, maybe I should talk to them, try getting a job with them, setting up that stuff for them. Maybe I could have made some money on the side or something.
Yeah, I was the guy. Programs. I was the guy that's doing the plumbing stuff. He's Ken Midget. He's from up north from me. Like he was at Lehigh County Technical School, which is about like 2 hours north of me, and he's now works with them doing their plumbing programming, for troubleshooting on that side. So I mean, yeah, you never know. They could be looking for somebody to help with kitchen stuff. You never know. Maybe they might find someone to help troubleshoot and beta test. I think they do look for beta testers at times sometimes on that. So they can basically say, hey, this is is this good? Is this a good way to look at it, or do we need to tweak some things? So they do kind of like take some of that.
Yeah, Joey says AmeriCool has a VR class, so that's cool. If you guys haven't checked out the Interplay Learning, check it out. I mean, years ago I thought it was kind of dumb, but it's come a long ways in a short amount of time. It's gotten a lot better. We do.
Sorry, go ahead.
We do some stuff with a company called Igniter Labs, and it's kind of like Interplay, but I think the Interplay has come a lot further than years ago. Adventure. Brett says lies. Why is Brett gonna come in here causing troubles? Yeah, it's cool. See who else is in here. Adrian was in here. Refrigeration Kitchen Tech was in here. So that's cool. Well, I'm glad you're liking the new job and the new scenery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like I said, it's very interesting, and it's there's opportunities. I mean, we've had I'm not sure why, but we had a couple guys that are leaving, but there are other guys too that are getting older and they're retiring. And the thing that I was talking with, because my wife hates me and I'm bored. That's funny. Oh my gosh. Anyway, but what I was talking with the service manager, like he's kind of like a near above me, was it'd be nice if we could get like some like younger kids like that are like in the VOTEC or whatever into it. But apparently like Train right now doesn't allow hiring of minors, which is somewhat unfortunate because he would agree with me because like Train seems like a good place where it's like you can kind of like start from a blank slate and be like, here's how we want you to do things. Like, we want you to start here and do like these are the steps you take. For some reason, I guess the policy right now is like not hiring minors. But I was just saying it'd be nice because like I said, you can get those young kids out there to get them because there's opportunity everywhere. I mean, like you guys, I'm sure are looking for people. Everyone's looking for people. It's crazy.
Yeah. So what do you guys consider minors? Under 21?
Oh, it's under 18.
Under 18.
So basically, So like that would be so like they have to be like basically graduated out of high school. They have to be a legal adult to be hired. I mean,
that's the way we are too.
Yeah, and they do hire like intern, like summer help. They usually hire like one person that is summer help. They actually had someone that he was summer help, and then he now he's with us full time. He's like 22 or whatever. He seems like he's a sharp kid too because he got in because his dad worked for Train for a number of years, so that was like he had a little bit of an in there. But yeah, it is kind of crazy, to see, almost like the stuff that's coming down the pike and just like, what kind of things are going to be transpiring here just with labor shortages and everything else and just getting people into this.
Yeah. The trade school is a huge avenue to go to. I mean, yeah, you can't hire them till they graduate, but I mean, I'd still, try to push the issue, get in there. We do the same thing. I try to get my company to do it. It's just, they don't have somebody do it. And then it's like, I'll do it. And then taking me out of the field for days, kind of rough on them. So, I think, getting to vocational school or, high school career days, just get in there and have a video plan, stand there with some tools, talk to the kids that have questions. I mean, yeah, they have to be 18, but I mean, at least you're still getting in front of them, giving them an option besides, all the colleges they're beating it in their face that they have to go to college and they really don't.
Oh yeah. I mean, and actually at the end of this month, I'm going to be doing like a little bit of a presentation with, some high schoolers at the church I go to. They have like a co-op where they they basically kind of meet. So I'm going to be and they've had other presentations on like from other trades as well. Like my wife was substituting for music and they had a welder in there. But so, and she gave me like a little bit of an insight where it's like, well, the girls seem bored because they see all this stuff as being a man's job. And I'm like, all right, well, now I got something to go on where it's just like, hey, ladies, get some real world skills. So, you don't have to be calling a plumber or an electrician to be fixing some simple stuff in your house, or, just some real life skills. That's like the selling point for me at this point, is just like, you can learn, you don't have to necessarily do this as a full-fledged career, but at least you have some like real world skills that will transfer into just like, being a better housekeeper and just being able to maintain your house better without having to spend hundreds of dollars on something simple.
And there are some girls out there, some women out there absolutely killing the HVAC.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
The refrigeration, the electrical side of it. We've got a woman up by me that works for us, and she changed over from the office into the field, and she's absolutely killing it. So, I mean, it's not a man. I mean, it's not a man's world, dude. The women can come in here and dominate, dude. I follow a lot of them on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and the stuff they're doing, man. I'm like, man, this is crazy. This is cool. So,
oh my gosh, yeah. You got like Brandy, who's been doing it for 18 years. Chiller chick. Oh my gosh, man. She's freaking trailblazer right there. And of course, you got everyone else. Jess and I mean, there's so many out there now. It's awesome. I mean, it's great to see, and it's great to see like almost like the support. At least the what I'll call the invisible support. I mean, I'm hoping they have like support, like real, like where they work or whatever, with people around them too. But yeah, it's nice to see like other people, at least like the invisible community of Instagram and wherever else, to basically rally around them and say, yeah, keep going, go at it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Brett's over here going crazy. He said a friend of his tried to go to a middle school and get people in the industry, and he said he realized two things. One, he didn't bring enough candy, and two, unless he said he was a YouTuber, no one was going to talk to him. So yeah, luckily I'm in a rural area. I'm not in a big city. I'm north of Indianapolis. I'm in a little bitty town of like 1,500 people, and all the towns around here are fairly small. So, we still have a true vocational program. My youngest son's actually taking welding next year. I was trying to get him to be a plumber, so I'd have, me doing HVAC refrigeration, my other son doing HVAC refrigeration, and him. I was like, you two could like take over the world in a few years, but I don't know what he's going to do. He wants to try plumbing for a year at vocational school and see where it goes. So I'm not going to beat him up. The bad thing is, this kid's like a 4.3 grade average. Every day we check the mail, and there's like 5 college letters in there wanting to talk to him. He got invited to the National Honor Society, and he told him to piss off. He didn't want to do any more work. He wasn't going to college. And the people at the school just looked at him like he was crazy. He's like, no, I'm not going to college. They're like, but you're so smart. And he's like, so that doesn't mean I have to go to college.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just it. I mean, oh my gosh, like that's the mindset that needs to change. Like, I mean, I fell into that trap. I mean, shoot, like my, a little bit with my like history is, my grandfather worked for Bethlehem Steel, and he was like a combustion engineer. He actually was the one that helped back when my parents moved to their house that they're in now. He converted their boiler from oil to gas. So he was the one that did that. My dad went to school to be a music teacher, and he did teach for a little bit. But then the bulk of his career was being an auto mechanic for a local Chevy dealer that was in the small town that my parents grew up in. So then there's me, who also went to college. I wanted to originally be a youth pastor, and ended up then falling into this as well, because I needed to do something to basically help make ends meet. And I was like, well, I'll go back to school for HVAC. There's this 1 year program that's not too far. I mean, yeah, it's going to stink, but you know what? And, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it's like Josh Zolan says, you kind of fall into it accidentally, and then you're just like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing since sliced bread. Like, what the heck? Why did no one tell me about this? Exactly. So yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, it's like the same for me with my kids too. It's like, look, I'll tell it to anybody too. It's just, if you don't know what you want to do, like if you don't know what you want to do, then at least get into a trade and at least learn some real world skills, and then you at least save up some money. And then if you figure out what you want to do, and that requires like a degree or some sort, well, then by all means, then sure. But then at least one, you've got some real world skills that you can fall back on. Two, you've got some money set back, so you don't have to take out so many damn loans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly, 100%. And that's a big mindset that I think it's kind of been, I guess, plaguing like trades and manual labor altogether. It's like, go to college or you'll have to do manual labor, or you don't want to end up a plumber. I remember I was in high school and our teacher told us, like, you got to better pay attention. You don't want to end up a plumber. And it's like, fast forward, I mean, plumbers are making bank, and like tradesmen, like some of the smartest people I've met personally were HVAC technicians. or like refrigeration guys. And it's just I guess it's just a different way to apply knowledge. It's not like the dumb guy's career path anymore. And that's kind of like what's plagued it for a while. It's like, yeah, maybe that exists, but I mean, if you're a smart guy, you know what you're doing and you're in the trades, I mean, you blow up. I mean, you climb the ladder and then you totally change the game. So that's a big mindset that I think needs to change. And that's what I tell my kids too all the time, is you don't have to go to college. That's not how you make it. You can work with your hands and earn an honest living. And, it takes just the same amount of knowledge as, most college degrees, and you won't have any debt. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like when I was in high school, even one of my, what was like our principal, we were at like a little assembly or whatever. And our principal was like, who all is going to the VOTEC? And, the guys that were there and like raised their hands or whatever. And the principal pointed to them. He goes, those are future millionaires right there. And of course, all of us were like, more of us that were kind of like academically minded. We're just like, oh yeah, sure, please, and whatever. And now, of course, now I'm doing this, I'm just like, damn it, he was right. And, in some small way, he was right. I mean, that's the thing. It's like you get into this, you can make decent money, and then you fall back on that with like in retirement investments or whatever else. Yeah, I mean, you can be making all kinds of bank because you know what the heck you're doing. I mean, you could even do like real estate rentals or that sort of thing because you can like manage those properties or whatever. Like it fix everything. If something breaks, you don't have to hire someone out or whatever. I mean, that's just it. There's also, I mean, and even one of my instructors at school was he always used to say, don't let anyone ever tell you that you're dumb. You're just as smart as some medical doctor. You can, it takes brain power to look at a piece of equipment, whether it's kitchen or comfort cooling or refrigeration, and look at it and say, oh, this is what it's supposed to be doing. This is what it's not doing. Here's what the problem is, and I'll fix it. That's not dumb. That takes some real smarts right there to know how that stuff works. I mean, there's all sorts of crazy science behind it.
Yep. Everyone has their own little thing. My wife's uncle, he owns patents through IBM. He's a computer software guy. That's what he's done his entire life. And he couldn't light a hot water heater. I had to go light a hot water heater at his father's new house. He couldn't light it. They called me and they're like, "Oh, we can't light this." And I'm like, "Well, the gas is turned off." I turned the gas on. Pilot lights. Like, here we go, guys.
I have a theory of life that either people are book smart, like everyone falls into a spectrum. They're either book smart or street smart, and everyone falls into those two. Like if you're really book smart, then you don't have a lot of street smarts, and if you're street smart, well, you don't necessarily have a lot of like book smarts. But everyone falls within that spectrum, I swear, because you can meet some of the smartest people, but they can just be sometimes as dumb as bricks when it comes to the simplest things, like the water heater thing. We would look at that and go, "Oh, is the gas on?" And like, no, there's, let's make sure the gas is turned on. Is there, okay, we'll light the pilot, that sort of thing. But someone else that would look at that and just go, "I have no idea what I'm looking at. I need to call somebody."
Exactly. And you'll always have it. I remember when I was doing residential HVAC, I had a service call, and it was this guy who was an investment banker. And he had a huge house, was like tucked away in a little neighborhood called Prospect. And, he had like 4 cars, and this guy, obviously had bank and was doing really well for himself. And I remember I showed up, it was just batteries and a thermostat. And we got to talking about like his career, and like, he asked me how I got in the trade and all this stuff. And I was like, and I made the comment, I was like, well, of course I'm not like an investment banker or anything, but I'm doing pretty good. And he stopped me. He was like, listen, man, you're even better because I couldn't have changed those batteries in that thermostat. If you would have charged me $500, I would have paid it because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And he was like, so you'll always have a job. He was like, it doesn't matter what we're doing. You're always going to have a job for, idiots who don't know what they're doing when it comes to things at home. So that's an interesting way to look at it. And that's kind of always stuck with me, So.
Rich had a good point. He said that his grandfather fell into this industry after doing all kinds of things, including opening a record store, a shoe store that failed. The last job he had before doing this was selling cars. Rich is a third generation, kitchen tech. So, I mean, there's a place in the world for everybody. I mean,
oh yeah.
Some guys are lucky they find it right out of high school, and some guys they find it when they're 50 years old. I mean, there's guys that hate their job for years and years and years. And eventually they just land somewhere, and it's something they've never thought they'd do. And they enjoy it and they like it. Some of us are just fortunate where we find it younger in life, and, we can build a career out of it and, retire fairly early and stuff like that. So
just there's even types.
Oh yeah. There's even a guy that I work with now. He actually, I found out he actually went to the same trade school that I went to. He went like a few years afterwards, but he's like, he was like the oldest guy in his class. He said at that point I was about 50. I mean, because I asked him how old he was. He's like, I'm about like 54. I've been doing this about 5 years now. And I'm like, holy cow, man, you really got a late start. But, he's like, he goes, man, I love this. This is great. I'm like, man, that's the thing. It's like, you just never know. And you're just never too old to kind of make some kind of switch like that.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. I'm not knocking anybody for anything they do. I mean, like I said, just be happy, if you enjoy what you do, I mean, it's that cliche, you never work a day in your life. I mean, it's still work, but if you enjoy what you do, it makes it more tolerable. It makes it easier.
Absolutely.
Sure. It's finding your niche in life too. It's like some people are meant to be doctors. Some people are meant to, fix cars. And it's Albert Einstein perfect quote for you guys. If you judge a fish by his ability to climb a tree, he'll spend his whole life thinking he's dumb. And that's true.
I've heard that.
It's which is a fantastic quote because it's true. It's different walks for everybody.
Yep. I never thought I'd be doing. I thought I took electrical at vocational school, and I was an electrician for a few years when I came out. And I swore up and down I was going to top out as a journeyman. I was going to buy a Corvette. I was going to do this, this, and this. I'd never even started school in the union. I got kicked out when the economy kind of tanked a little bit because I hadn't started school yet. I went non-union for a while and just ended up getting sick of doing what I was doing and bouncing to this. And it's just been no looking back, man. I really like it. It's just, I mean, it's cool. It's not necessarily the HVAC trade. It's a part of it, but I mean, it's a blast. So
I bet that helped a lot though. Like with your electrical background, switching over to working on kitchen equipment. I mean, you already had that part of it aced. Yeah.
Yeah, it helped a ton. That's for sure. I wasn't scared to work on live shit. Yeah. Unfortunately, I still get it every once in a while, man. What gets me is these European combis. So they switch to neutral. So you'll have the unit off, and if you don't know, you won't realize it. But like half those components still have 240 volts on a single because everything has a transformer. It's 240 volt, and then switch neutral because it's European. And you'll be like, "Oh, I'm gonna take a solenoid out," and you're like, "Hey, oh shit, let me unplug this thing." So,
always unplug the combo therms.
Yeah, anything that's European gets unplugged before I touch it, man. Before I change a part. So. That's cool.
If the data tag's in German, I'm unplugging it.
Yeah. So I see your bio. You're writing for Gary. I wanted to do that, and my work didn't really like the idea of it too much. So I don't think I'm gonna do it. But that's cool.
Yeah, I just and part of my the writing thing is kind of like I have that college degree, and so some of that was with what I did was writing a lot of papers. So I mean, I even then. Ben Poole there from HVAC Tactical. I don't forget how he kind of found out. I think he kind of looked at my bio too. He's like, "Oh, you write articles or whatever." I'm like, "Yeah." And so I actually ended up writing. Maybe you saw it, Pat, in the magazine, the Tactical Award magazine. So he had me. I wrote up like a little article for him for that, and because he asked me if I would do something. I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I can whip up something for you. Not a problem. Yeah, that's fine." So
yeah, I think when he's trying to launch it, I think, and I told him I was like, "If you need anything kitchen based, refrigeration based on my side of it, so let me know. I'll gladly help you out." But yeah, I was trying to get involved with Gary, on that, and then I write stuff from my work. They think it's a conflict of interest. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize my normal career, if you know what I mean. So
sure,
I mean, it is what it is. So I mean, they want to talk about it, so we'll see what happens. I just got to schedule a meeting time and talk to him about it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've written a couple of things for him. I've not done anything like recently. It's kind of been on a little bit of hiatus, just because like it would just be like, oh, like something would like pop in my head. I'm like, oh, I should do something about this because this is kind of like a little bit of a niche thing. Like, I wrote actually the one that I'm not sure if it's gotten the most clicks on my Linktree anyway. Has been like a small article I wrote about heat exchangers. Because of course that's a big deal. Like you find a cracked heat exchanger, you shut it down. It's like, well, okay, what's the is there any kind of science behind it? Like what's the danger? What are the actual, hazards with that? Or like what can actually happen with that? So there's something like that I wrote. And then I even wrote about cause I did a lot of geothermal work. So I was writing about, like geothermal systems, you can actually tie in on some of them. You can tie in that you have domestic water going into it. And it goes, and the discharge gas hits the domestic water first, and it helps to almost like heat your domestic water in your house and before it goes to your actual water heater. So it's almost like a pre-treatment. So you actually spend a little less money on heating your water, like heating your water with an electric water heater or even with a gas water heater if you have a storage tank. So that's something I have done in the past. He wants to try and expand that. He's trying to be like he's trying to be like a little bit more like Brian Orr, I think, in that on that front, because I said he's like, yeah, I want to get more content. He would like to have like pictures and this and that. It's like, oh, so you're trying to do what Brian's doing with his quote unquote daily tech tips or whatever, because Brian sends those out or whatever, and it's like these lengthy things. I'm like, this is not a tech tip. This is a freaking article.
It's a manual.
It's like yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, like to read this is going to take me like an hour. Like I don't need to read like something that's going to take me an hour. Like I just start skimming through whatever. And then I even said, oh yeah, by the way too, Gary goes, oh yeah, well I don't have time to be doing something daily like that. I said, that's okay. Brian recycles them after a few years.
Brian's a freaking genius, and Gary is too, man. I love their content and stuff they put out. And Brian just kills me because his dad jokes. It's just funny. I mean,
I love the dad jokes at the end, man.
Yeah, it gets me every time. My trainees look at me like I'm stupid because I'm over there laughing. And I'm like, you got to understand who Brian is, man. It's like if you've listened to him long enough, his story and stuff. It fits him perfect. So.
Oh yeah, like there's some episodes he put out like from AHR, and there wasn't a dad joke at the end. I was like, come on, man.
You're like. You're not getting a 5-star review for this one, Brian. Sorry.
Yeah, 4 stars. There was no dad joke at the end. Come on.
That's cool. But I love the stuff Gary does too. He does a lot of informative stuff, and he's showing guys how to do some stuff. So it's great content as well, man. There's a lot of good guys in the industry that are trying to do stuff like that. Craig, I'm gonna butcher his last name, Migliaccio,
yeah, AC Service Tech, yep.
Yeah, he's actually coming on next week.
Nice.
He reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, I want to come on." And I was like, "What?" That is like that dude is the nicest guy I've ever met in my entire life. He chased me down at the HVAC Tactical Awards. And was like, "I've been watching your stuff. I wanted to meet you." And like, then he found me at AHR like twice. I was like, "Come up, just talking to me." I was like, "This dude is freaking." Has like in our industry has like the biggest following on YouTube and everything else. He's like looking for me. I'm like, this is crazy. So yep, he's gonna be on next week. So I'd look forward to that one. Nice. I'm sure that one's gonna be a marathon. So he's a great guy. There's Ty Branneman's out there putting out some great content. He's smart. He loves what he does, and he puts a really good spin on it too. So there's a lot of guys putting out quality stuff, man.
For sure. I love Ty with the little hand, the
hand pointer thing. Dude.
Oh my gosh, that cracks me up. I love the little hand thing. I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's so corny, but it's just so funny though.
I need to talk to him too. He showed some interest about coming on too. So he's that hand pointer though, dude. Every time I see him as a video and I don't see him in it, it's like the compressor is painted blue and red, and the reversing valves, and I'm like, and all of a sudden the little pointer comes in. I'm like, yes, it's Ty. So that's great.
Oh, everyone's got their little shtick. He's got the pointer.
I got the sticking my head in the freezer, and I got everyone just knocking it off now. HVACJ did it. Adrian did it this week when I was on his show. He opened up his van door, so it's great. It's funny. It's just something different. I was bored one day and I have a commercial grade freezer in my house, and I just did it, and now it just kind of stuck. So I was on vacation last week and I recorded, so I had to just steal an image, and then I can't do this. There's just do a little difference on it, but it's cool. So you have a podcast you do, and trade therapy. If you want to go into it a little bit, you can explain, what your goal is, what you talk about. We did like a little hybrid episode with me, you, and Gary. It's kind of cool to talk about, some of the things mistakes I've made, some of the things that I need to change, I need to work on. It's brought me to where I am in my life. I'm not here to beat anybody up, dude. I'm far from perfect. I make mistakes every damn day. You just got to try to be better every day and make sure you got people to talk to. So you want to go ahead and talk about trade therapy for a little bit?
Yeah. So so trade therapy is something that I launched unofficially, like, was it like last July? I made like a welcome and an intro, and then I was like just put it on pause because I couldn't find anybody, and then I'm finally kind of gained some traction with it. I'd say like basically since the start of the year, toward the end of last year. The goal with it is to talk to people that have dealt with, whether it's like mental health issues, whether like with you, Pat, like you had like your sleep, the sleep apnea thing, or just like or whether it's depression, addiction. Like for me, I had an addiction problem, and that's so that was like, it was a little bit of a personal thing for me. I've had people talk about like abuse, anxiety, depression, and that sort of like all these different things. It doesn't have to be like something like, it's totally, like diagnosed mental issue. It's just something that, like whether you've dealt with, and like the struggle, because I've kind of realized like, everyone has their own stuff that they deal with, but in the trades for so long, it's just been like this whole like macho man mentality where it's just like, well, just suck it up and deal with it. Quit being a bitch. That's that sort of thing. And for me, it's like, well, no, I mean, we're all human. Like, I see like your Mike Mayberry sticker there, be good humans. It's just like, we got it. You just kind of, we all have our own crap to deal with. We're all trying to better ourselves. Again, it's like, it's that mindset thing. Like, like Ben says. So for me, it's just like, let's just make this more normal, because everyone keeps talking about it. But it's like, well, I'd rather like put like some faces and names to these issues and say like, like, hey, here's somebody that works in plumbing or works in HVAC or works in electrical that has dealt with whatever it is. And here are the things that they've done to overcome it.
Yep.
I mean, I know like, Gil and I did like a little kind of tag team thing where like I was on his show. We were talking about like the stuff we've dealt with. I mean, I've talked with you. I mean, there's been a handful of people that I've talked with. I mean, and so it's been nice to get those stories out there, because my mentality is like, if someone is out there then that listens to that and then realizes that there's something that they need to fix in their own life, and I'm like kind of like a catalyst where they go, you know what, maybe I do need to go see a therapist, or maybe I do need to go talk to somebody, or maybe I do need to go to like an AA meeting or something else along those lines. Like, then that just makes it worth it for me, because it's like I've helped somebody out, and that's kind of the good and the goal, because there were like a handful of other podcasters like, like Gary or the like the HVAC jerks. There were a handful of them that they talked about it, but it was just kind of like it was like a one-off episode where like, we've got there's mental health issues, we need to talk about it, but no one is actually talking about it. So I thought, well, shoot, I'll take this bull by the horns and I'll give this a whirl and see what the heck I can figure out. So it's what do I have up to now? Like 10 episodes. So nothing crazy, but part of the problem for me though is it's not a problem, but it's just more like, finding people that are willing to share.
Yeah.
Because there are those people out there that, there have been a couple of people I've reached out to because like I know that they have dealt with something, and or they're still dealing with it, and they're still healing from it, but they're just not quite ready to share. And I've said, look, I get it. That's no problem. I mean, there's a couple people, I won't say any names actually, but they were like, one person was like, oh yeah, I'll come on and I'll talk about it. Then he was like, I just can't, like, I'm like, I don't want to be talking about that. I only want to focus on this one thing or whatever. I'm like, that's fine. That's cool. I get it. I mean, not everyone's ready to share. Not everyone is in like that space yet where they feel like they've healed enough to talk about it. So, I mean, I have to respect that with people. So that's been a little bit of a struggle on that front, but I mean, I'm just trying to get who I can. I mean, if I see something that catches my eye with whoever the people I'm following with, it's just like, hey, would you be willing to share this or talk about this or whatever? And, sometimes it's like, yeah, that'd be great. And then it's a matter of scheduling, which can be a little bit tricky or whatever, but I mean, I feel like I need to maybe sometime I feel like I need to be like some of these other guys that have like these calendars, and it's like, here, click your date to schedule a thing, or I don't know. I have no idea, but I'm
the calendar. I've got one set up. I just haven't published a link to it yet, so I get it. I did the episode and it felt good. My life's an open book, my side of it. Now I've had some personal stuff happen the last couple of months, man, that absolutely rocked my world. Made me the outlook I've changed. The outlook I see on things, it's changed a lot. And thinking maybe I could have done some things different in my life, how I treated some people I know and some immediate family members, and it's made me realize that, I knew I had problems in the past, but, I was always bottle that shit up and deal with it, later. That little meme everyone has is just a little black screen. It's got a little bottle. It just says bottle that shit up. You can only do that so long before something does happen, before it finally gets to you. And something happened pretty bad. And I had some people, and two people I talked to were complete strangers. I told them what happened. And they literally, like, I was on the floor of a show, the wet show, talking to two people I've met twice in my entire life, and I had them crying on the floor of the wet show in their booth.
Oh wow!
Because it was fresh and just happened, and like I seen something and it triggered a memory of what was going on, and I started tearing up. They're like, "What's wrong?" And I told them, and they started crying. I was like, "I'm sorry." I was like, "I didn't mean to do that to you." Like, no, like I was like, it just kind of came out. I seen this and it just triggered it, and I was like, man. And I felt better just to tell somebody. And then I talked to some other guys in the trade, and they're like, man, you wouldn't believe how many times that something like that's happened to me or someone I know, they're like, it happens to a lot of people you don't even realize. They're like, talk about it, and it does help. I mean, even if you don't talk professional, if you talk to a friend, a family member, somebody, just get that weight off your chest, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's like you're saying about like that, that whole like bottle of that shit up. I always like to use the analogy of like, shoving stuff into a closet. It's just like you can only shove so much stuff into that closet before next thing you know, you open up that door and it just falls on you, and then you've got you got to deal with it. I mean, that's just it. You have to, whatever it is that you're dealing with, you have to just like address it and just realize that it's there and take steps to take care of it. Otherwise it just becomes like this big bottle of mess or whatever, and then one day if it's a bottle, like say for the cork comes off and it just all flows out, and then you're just a mess.
Yeah, you're taking it out on people that weren't involved in it or had nothing to do with it. I mean, there's all kinds of repercussions and stuff from just doing it. I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. I just try to be better each day. And I used to be a troll on the internet, and you go into a Facebook group and someone asks you a question, and everyone's just jumping on, and that'd be me. And once I gave that up, I started feeling a lot better in life. And it's like, maybe this guy isn't in here joking and making that question. Maybe that's a legit question. How about you guys help him out? So just jumping on him. And it's like, just be a little kinder to everybody and just, see what you can do.
Oh, yeah. And I see, even like on Instagram, every once in a while, not so much on Instagram, but I've been seeing some of it kind of creep in a little bit where you get some of these people, like some of these more trollish people that are in there. And it's just like, dude, just stop. They're like trying to pick on something, take an example. I don't know, like Eric Ani, for example, because he's got a lot of followers. Like the other people like that comment or whatever. And it just kills me. Like sometimes when you get those people in there that they think they know better. And it's just like, oh my gosh.
Jay.
Oh, hi, Jay.
HVAC J604. Yes. You missed the beginning. We talked about it earlier, Jay. I love Jay, man. He's one of the man. There's always a saying where people are like, "Oh, the Canadians are nice."
That would be.
Yeah,
I can't imagine always like.
Yeah, people always like, "Oh, the Canadians are the nicest people in the world," and I'm like, "Man, I don't know." And then like every Canadian I meet has like been like the nicest person in the world. I'm like, okay, maybe this is true. So
nice.
Well, I won't keep you much longer. We're coming up on an hour. Go ahead and tell everybody where they can find your podcast, where they can find you at. Sure. If they want to come on Trade Therapy and tell a story, I'm more than welcome to help, facilitate that, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Trade Therapy I've pretty much put it out on every major podcast platform. So like Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I think Google Podcasts. I finally got to the point. I finally took the time to like basically have it where it like gets launched out. Yeah, to have it listed everywhere. So Trade Therapy, easy enough. And then my handle, as Pat said here at the top of it is HVAC_grammarian. So that's grammar with Ian at the end for those of you who have trouble spelling J. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, but that's where that's the only place I go. Like Instagram is my only vice, as I call it, because again, with me, like I can't like spend too much time with screens, or otherwise I just get pulled right in. So that Instagram is it for me. Like that's all I got. But that's the best way to get a hold of me. And like I said, if anyone's out there that has a story to share, absolutely, I am all ears.
That's cool. Well, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. Make sure you guys follow him, check out his podcast, and support this guy. So have a good night, everybody.
All right. Thanks.